What is up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of season 3 on the Pursuit of Progress podcast. As always, I'm Adam, along with my co host, Ben. And let's get real, you guys. Most people don't fail because their goals are too big. They fail because their identity never caught up with what they were chasing. You say you want to run a marathon, launch a business, or just become financially free. But do you see yourself as the kind of person who actually follows through? That's the disconnect. And that's what we're going to fix with you guys today. So, in this episode, Ben and I are breaking down a simple framework we've both been using personally to make real, lasting change, not just for the new year, but for the next version of who we are becoming. It's called the S.E.S blueprint and is built around 3 game changers. S is for skills, E is for environment, and S is for standards. If you're tired of setting goals that don't stick, this episode is right what you need. Let's fix that right now. And with that, Ben, welcome to the show, bud.
Oh, so excited. Let's talk about the S.E.S framework. I'm so excited that we're having this conversation today. I'm going to start off with S is for skills. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your skill set. Let me give you an example. When I first started running competitively in high school, I could barely run a mile or two. And it didn't matter how excited or fired up I was. I just didn't have the skills, or in this case, the endurance to do distance running yet. And that's where most people get stuck. They set big goals, but they don't identify the gap between where they are now and who they need to become to actually hit those goals. And this is always the hardest part, building out that new skill, the new discipline. Because when you start running, like in my case, for example, when you start running, you're out of shape. And doing something when you're out of shape and you haven't developed the skill or the habit or the discipline, it's just harder. But once you build the skill, watch out. So here's where the mindset shift happens. When you write down a goal, also write down a question. What skills do I need to learn or improve to make this happen? And then go find them. Ask yourself a couple of these questions. What books do I need to read? Who's already done this and how can I learn from them? What course or mentor can shortcut this path for me? Success leaves clues, so focus on the skills, focus on the behavior, focus on the discipline, and the results will take care of themselves. And the fastest way to level up is with to get obsessed with learning what you don't already know.
Absolutely. I 100% agree about that. We were actually just talking about that at the gym over the weekend about just with working out and how hard it is at first and just understanding that going into it because it's that consistency that pays off, not, going for one day and having it be so miserable because you go 100 miles an hour, just understanding that a little bit better with not just your endurance, but just with skills in general.
Yeah, and that's why I always enjoy sharing that running analogy because it is so true. When you start something new, you aren't going to have the skill or the behavior, or the discipline. You haven't developed it yet, but you're taking on this new journey and you want to learn this. But when you're starting out, you're going for runs, going to the gym, you literally don't have the muscle or the physical fitness or the cardiovascular fitness. And during that time, that is going to be the hardest part of the journey. And that's why so many people get discouraged, is because you're doing something. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable. It's very painful. It's very uncomfortable. You're out of shape and you're wondering, is it all worth it? And what am I doing?
Yeah, I can't think of very many just physical activities that can teach you that better than running, especially if you're somebody like myself that, hasn't ran in a very long time. Just, I think that's a fun skill set challenge for a lot of us, just really getting
Yeah.
outside of their comfort zone with something like running. So, well, with that, let's just jump right now into the second one, which is E. So we had skills. Now we have E for environment. And your environment, I want you guys to think about it this way. Your environment is either pushing you forward or it's really quietly actually holding you back. There's no middle ground when it comes to environment. Like, for example, when I first got into real estate, I was really intentional about deciding who I spent time around. I started seeking out people who were already a few steps ahead of me, people who were building, learning, just doing things at a really high level. And yeah, Ben, you were definitely one of those people, especially when I was first kind of getting started, just having people around me that were already further down the path than I was to then, really mimic them in a sense, really understand that it's not about titles or money. What it really is important is just getting in those rooms where I felt like I was, behind everybody else in the room. That's where that true growth lives. You hear a lot of people talk about, you always want to be the dumbest person in the room, or you always want to be
Yeah.
the poorest person in the room. And there's so much truth to that. because being around driven, thoughtful professionals changes completely how you think about everything. It raises your standards. It forces you to, I don't know, just kind of like sharpen your game. And most
Hmm.
people don't do that. They stay comfortable. They hang with the same crowd that they were friends with 25 years ago. They
Yeah.
hope for different results, but they don't take any change. So I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to get at is if you really want to go fast, you really have to choose your circle on purpose because it's that current environment that might not be challenging you. Where if you put yourself in a new environment, it's the training you to stay much more ahead of where you would be if you didn't do anything at all. So a couple questions, kind of like Ben did on the last one, a couple questions to ask yourself here. Who do I need to spend more time around? What rooms and maybe are you afraid to walk into? And what mastermind group, gym, just what networks are out there that would challenge you to step up because your environment becomes your identity. So just make sure you guys are choosing that very cautiously and choosing wisely.
Yeah, it's so interesting because sometimes you know inside and internally that it's time for you to step into another room. But taking that step is very, very difficult. And I've experienced this at different times in my life where you just have that internal calling where maybe you feel like you're being a little bit complacent with your job or your career or your workout routine, and you're feeling this calling to do more, challenge yourself a little bit. And that's when really listen to your inner self when you're feeling that way. I've tried to get more in tune with that and just have that internal dialogue where I can be self aware and just identify that. And then the other comment that I was going to make is how many of us, and I'm sure I'm probably guilty of this at times as well, but I just see so many people, as you just touched on, staying in that same circle where it's just going to be totally comfortable. People with the same beliefs, the same political affiliations, and it just turns into this yes man conversation.
Hmm.
And I want to be someone where I can sit down and have different types of conversations, regardless if I agree with the person or not, and have a different perspective, and we can still be civil and learn and engage and build and and do things that are meaningful.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it reminds me of the Pareto principle, which we've done a few other episodes on in the past in seasons one and season two. But just this concept of they talk about if you had five people, basically you and your four closest friends, and you basically had everybody in a room together, and you went around and everybody said what their the four people that you were with each told
Hmm.
them honestly what they made annually as their pay, what they made in a year. It's like crazy the percentage of how frequently common the fifth person, you in this case,
Yeah.
has almost an exact salary or an annual earnings that's equivalent to the average of the other four people.
Hmm.
Just really just like kind of breaking it down in a way that's easy to understand that, the
And
surroundings
even if
and
you
the
don't
environment.
talk about it, it's not like most people are talking about their salary. Like I make X amount of dollars and you're within range of me. It's that the way that I've always understood that is it's kind of a lifestyle. It's a pattern, the way people live their lives. So people that earn X amount of dollars live their lives a certain way. And people that have a very high net worth and either make millions or worth millions, they live their life a certain way.
Well, I think that leads us perfectly into the third part of this, which I'll let you present, which is S, which very closely aligns with what you're talking about right now.
That's right. Yeah. So SES. So this is our second S. S is for standards. And so here is where things go from nice idea to non negotiable. Habits are helpful, but standards are what build identity. It's the difference between I want to eat healthy versus I don't eat fast food. It's not about willpower, it's about deciding what is no longer acceptable for the person that you're becoming. So here's a real life example of how I approach it. And this is going to sound kind of playful and fun, maybe a little ridiculous, but I just have a rule. I don't eat ice cream or I don't eat dessert unless I have worked out in the morning and gone for my run in the evening. If I do both of those things, if I work out for an hour in the morning and then get at least a 4 mile run in the evening, I have no problem having dessert or having a little ice cream. But I don't do that unless I do both of those things. That's a standard for me. And it might sound kind of silly, but honestly, I do not deviate from it. That's the reward for me. That's the standard. Another one is I am, and that's helped me a lot with my power language. I am going to get up on time. I am going to make my bed. Um, into my 20s and probably even my early 30s, I was not someone who made my bed uh, or regularly did that on a regular basis. And now it's something that's a non negotiable. I am going to do that. So having those conversations with yourself using the language like that, these aren't preferences that we're talking about, they're promises. They create alignment between your identity and your action. And that's why it's so important. If your identity is, I'm a builder, I'm a finisher, I'm a winner, then every decision becomes easier because it either supports that identity or it doesn't. And here's the most important thing that people forget. Your standards aren't what you say, they're what you tolerate. So raise them. A quick final note here is, I'm teaching my daughter and really both of my kids not to go off of what people say, learn from what they do. They might say this, they might say that they're your friend, or you might tell them something in confidence and they say they're not going to repeat it. But what are they actually doing? So if someone shows you who they are, regardless of what they say, they show you who they are with their actions, believe them.
Love that. Yeah, I've heard a lot of just entrepreneurs recently. I think for a lot of the audience that doesn't know, one of my favorites is Andy Frisella, who I've consumed his content for years and just really admire his take on a lot of this stuff. But he talks a lot about becoming your future self today. So even if you're, you know, 10 years from where you want to be, so to speak,
Hmm.
even today or tomorrow morning, you can start to act the way that future self needs to
Yeah.
be in order to be in that place that they're at in your life. And the point I wanted just to make on this, though, is I know it seems overwhelming to all of a sudden be this different person, but all it takes is one day. Just literally tomorrow could be completely different than today. If you're
Yeah.
finally to that breaking point and you want to be a builder, a finisher, a winner, you can be that tomorrow. You don't have to wait for 6 months or a year when you're a little bit in better shape and then you're a winner. Just start having those standards immediately,
Yeah.
and you're going to be amazed at how quicker you're able to get to that point.
Make the decision today.
hmm Love that.
Do you ever have conversations with like either your younger self or your older self? I know that we're talking about, kind of visualizing what does my older self look like, but I actually have conversations. I'll go back and put myself in put my present in my 10-year-old self uh mind and body, and I'll just like give him some encouragement sometimes,
hmm
even
Uh,
though that was 30 years ago. I'll be like, Ben, you know what, man? You're going through this thing, but I'm so thankful that you did this, that you handled this way. And there's other times where I'm like, you know what? I look back and I'm maybe embarrassed about my behavior, and I talk to my 15-year-old self. You know what? You can do better.
mhm.
And then same thing. I'll look at my 50-year-old self, my 60-year-old self. How does that person behave? How does he act? What kind of conversations does he have? Who does he hang out with?
Yeah, one thing I'll share on that before we close this one out is for any of you guys out there, I'm sure most of you know who Mr. Beast is, who's just one of the most, I guess, largest reach of anybody on the planet from YouTube. So he's the first person to hit 400 million subscribers on YouTube. But one
Mhm.
kind of exercise that he did that I thought was super cool and really just a visionary for thinking this way, he created a video 10 years ago and scheduled it in YouTube to
Wow.
publish 10 years later. And it's just a video of him talking about where he is, when he's filming it, but also where he thinks he's going to be when this video releases in 10 years.
Okay.
I think he actually did one. It was like 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years, I think.
And so he's filming a video in 2016 talking to
He
himself
calls it,
as if he's in 2026, uh, talking about what life looks like, who he's with, where he's
mhm.
at.
I think it's called like a note to myself, future
Okay.
self. If you look it
That's
up on
bold.
YouTube, you can find it, but really cool. And just amazing how further he was, kind of like that same idea that I always butcher this quote, but you're amazed at how much further you can be in 10 years. I'll let you
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah. It's like most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years.
Yeah,
You did butcher that.
I know. Sorry. That's why I knew. So I just passed the buck to you. All right, guys. Let's just kind of recap really quick and then finish this one out. So the framework once again, SES, skills, environment, standards. Close the skill gap. Don't just set goals, study for them. Change your environment, get in rooms that actually stretch you, and then raise your standards. Decide what the next version of you will no longer accept. You don't need a different calendar to become somebody new, but you do need a different identity. So let's go out there and let's build it.
That's right. And here's the truth. Setting goals is easy, but becoming the kind of person who actually lives them out, that's the hard part. But it's also the most interesting and the most rewarding. So here's your next step as we wrap up here. Take 10 minutes today and write down your own SES blueprint. What skills do you need to learn? What environments do you need to join or leave? What standards are you raising for yourself this year? When I have these conversations with myself, oftentimes looking for skills that I know are going to benefit multiple areas of my life. What are skills that I can learn that are going to make me better in business, make me a better dad, make me a better friend? And if you don't know where to start, one skill that you can start that's going to have a positive impact on all those areas is communication. For me, I love reading books on communication. I'm reading several right now. I read several last year. It's a great place to start. Um, so this isn't just about hitting goals, it's about becoming someone new. Thanks for tuning in to the Pursuit of Progress. We'll see you guys next week. Same time, same mission. Until then, keep moving forward. Lights out.
Hell yeah. See you guys.